Let me give you a run through the fields in the information code list. And before doing that, to make it easier to explain, let me just show you the long description on the item list. So we have the long description here, which is made of all the different master data, some of the different master data. As for instance, here you can see it's a 7-gear wheel diameter, etc. And some of it is actually Danish because in my setup I set it to be Danish. But this is the long description, and likewise you could create description fields, and that's part of the setup in the information code list, because I'm not going to explain that too much. But let's look at the information code list. First of all, you have the information code field, and description is like adding the new field with the caption you would like to have. The subtype determines whether it's a specification, a text, or a file, depending on the filtering you want when you enter it from the different pages. The field rolled up hierarchy is actually a field we use in the sales configurator, which is an app lying on top of the master data information. So as long as you use the master data information, this field is used for nothing. You could just hide it. If you have the configurator, is used to determine whether, for instance, the master data gear should be rolled up on the top level items to include this information. Now all the next column, create description, include in long description order, and up till report description order, is all about building description like I showed you before on the item list. So it's all about how would you mix description, and we have separate videos for that, because you go into a setup and define how to do it in here. So all those fields, there's a separate video explaining the long description and description setup, how to use that. Sorting level is basically a field that is default set up with 99, and then you can change it. So if you want the information code to show up higher, like my number 5 here, I changed it to number 5. You can see chain relation is not in alphabetical order, and then comes all the other ones in alphabetical order with the same sorting level. And if I scroll down, I have some down here in with 100 and 105. This way you can set up your information code list to be bundled in order of type. So everything in my case that has to do with bikes could be bundled, everything with clothes could be bundled, and so on. You can use the sorting level for that. Allowing multiple information value is a check mark that determines that you can set up more than one information value for this specific information code. So you can see some of them having check mark here. So for instance, product icon, product type, product area. This means if I open, as an example, my item, and I look at my specification in here, I wouldn't be able to add another bike type than city bike, because this one only allows one, likewise with gear and some of the other stuff. Whereas I know with my files that are set up in here that the product icon and user manual is set up to carry more than one information code. So just have to have different information values, and in that case I can add more than one. So in this case I could build a structure saying, for instance, this is all icons, files, or pictures that I'd like to go to my web shop explaining about stuff about this bike. So I can have a structure saying product icon, and beneath that information value with a drop down list. So this needs a check mark that we call allow multiple information value. The field validation type in here explains whether the field value should be validated to a specific type. So if you set it to be a decimal, you can only write a full normal number, including commas. If it's an integer, you can only write a number without decimals on it. If it's a date formula, you will have to state something like 7D for 7 days or 2M for 2 months and so on, with using Business Central standard date formula. If it's a Boolean, it will, because it's a text field, it will interpret it as yes or no. So it will have to be yes or no if it's a Boolean field. If it's a date field, you will have to state something that it understands as date, and date time, it should be written as date time. So this field checks that, for instance, my last date tested needs to be a date field. My wheel diameter needs to be a decimal field. So if we try it out, and on my bike, I would just add last date tested. It's already up here, and I have a value already in here. And if I enter something else that is not a value, I will get an error saying this needs to be a date field. I could add, like in standard Business Central, a T for today, and it will interpret this as today and change it to be a date field. Or I could just enter the date manually. That logical dependencies exist is actually a field just stating that we have logical dependencies for this item. There's a separate video for that, and it just means that the setup for logical dependencies is made. So if I'm searching here for logical dependencies in here, and I remove my filter, you can see there's a logical dependency list here where you can set up something like configurable stuff. So if it's a bike type is Colibri, the gear will have to differ from Claris, etc. There's another video explaining that, but basically that's in here on the information code list. We are just displaying that logical dependencies exist. Sorry, this field over here. Pop-up messages can be defined in here, so you can see if you're defining pop-up messages per sales or purchase. So this column just displays if you have definition for pop-up messages that you want to show, and it's explained in other video how to set it up. But basically it's about if an item has a notification, it should show a pop-up messages on the sales line when you enter the item number. So there's a setup here, and there's a setup in the master data information setup, and there's a separate video for that. The column table and table name is displayed automatically when you enter the table number, defines that this master, this information code material is only allowed to be used on the item table. The loyalty program is only allowed to be used on customers, and the last service date only on serial number information, etc. If there's no table added here, you can use it on all tables. So for instance, my notification can be used on both customers and vendors and items and everything, whereas my material can only be used on items. So when I'm opening my information code list from items, I would see everything which is here stated with 27 and blank. So, and if it's a specification, of course, it will be filtering on specification as well. So specification, table number, and blank. So let's try to do that just to show you. If I'm opening my item list, opening master data information, specification, diving into my information code, this is my filter. It needs to be specification. The table is either blank or 27. So this is for filtering purposes. And the last filter also the last column in the information code list is a check mark saying delete is not allowed. So if you check mark this is to make sure that nobody deletes your information code, because one of the good things about master data information is it's easy to clean up. So it's easy to delete stuff you made, whereas in the old days when we added code to the system, it's very complicated to delete fields or information once we made it, whereas here you can delete it. But if something is very restrict, you could place a check mark here to make sure that it's not deleted. And of course you need to make sure that the information code list is having a permission set so you can control this. So those are the fields on the information code list.